In this video lecture, we're going to take last week's Hello World program and refactor or modify it into a more traditional object-oriented style. Okay, let's get started. So here's a picture of the Hello World program that we created together last week. Creating this program from a set of step-by-step instructions served to give you some initial exposure to the Java language and the JGrasp IDE. Hopefully you found this to be a pretty straightforward assignment. This was a simple, trivial program, but it really did serve some useful purposes. We learned a simple, iterative design cycle of making some changes, compiling them, executing them, and then repeating that process. We got our program to be able to display some simple output at user command. And now that we have a simple working Java program in our hands, we can use it as a starting point for experimentation with the language, as I hope you all did at the end of the last assignment. Hopefully you did do all those experiments, because if you did, you should have taken these lessons away from that assignment. For example, spelling and case sensitivity do matter. Java is very picky about those things. The compiler will flag you on even the smallest errors, as I'm sure many of you have found out. All code needs to be inside a balanced pair of opening and closing curly braces, such as these brace pairs on the right. And a semicolon must terminate every statement, such as here or here. Hopefully you saw that our short, tight, iterative design cycle helped us make forward progress. By frequently saving and compiling our changes, it enabled us to more quickly find any errors in our code. And finally, working in an IDE such as JGrasp lets us better visualize the various aspects of our code through its context-aware colorization of the code, as we see here on the right. If we step back and reflect on our code a little bit, hopefully we can now better see its fundamental structure. At the top in orange is a header block, which is just a multi-line Java comment that isn't even seen by the compiler. The purpose of this header block, which is mandatory in this course, is to document some things about our code, and it's just a good software habit to get into early on. At the outermost level, we had the Hello World class, which was itself the container for two methods, main and print greeting, which each contained a single Java statement, as we see here and here. We said that one such main method is the required starting point in any Java application, and that the print greeting method constructed and printed a greeting, given a first and last name. So this was the structure of our code. Two methods inside their containing class. Again, two methods inside their containing class. By the way, the Hello World program we wrote demonstrated two of the four basic programming control flows. Flows of control are simply the different instruction paths that a program's logic can take. The first one is sequential execution, which simply represents an ordered step-by-step execution of instructions. We see this internal to both the main and print greeting methods. The second flow of control is a method call, which represents a program jumping to some other named method, doing something, and then returning a result. We saw this when the main method called or invoked the print greeting method. There are also two other program flows of control, which we'll see later in the course. Selection represents logical decision making or forks in the road, and looping is just repeatedly executing the same instructions over and over again. Most of the programs you'll be writing over the next several weeks will represent sequential execution. We will also do some work with method calls, both writing them for ourselves and using existing ones provided by the Java language. We'll cover selection and looping later in the course, probably after the midterm, when we start writing larger and more complex programs. So in this week's revision of the Hello World program, we'd like to improve our first simple attempt and start transforming it into a more traditional object-oriented structure. To do this, we'll modify it into a two-class solution, a short main client program and a second utility class containing most of the underlying details. The advantages of such restructuring are that the second utility class will carve out the underlying print details, and it will become a small, reusable software component. This also makes the main client program more compact by outsourcing the print details elsewhere. Just as a refresher, we said that a class is a template or a blueprint for a reusable software component. one which describes some real-world thing. Let's remind ourselves of what we mean by that. Here again is the depiction we saw back in week 1. A class is a blueprint for some software component which bundles together data and operations. An object, by contrast, is one individual instance of that software thing that we can create or stamp out from that class blueprint. So here's the transformation we'll be making in this week's Hello Again lab assignment. We're going to turn last week's Java application into a 2-file, more object-oriented solution. We'll have a smaller, leaner main application class, and we'll carve out the print details and hide them away in this other utility class. Notice that the utility class won't have its own main method, but that's okay, because its purpose in life will be as a reusable software component used by the main client application. This Hello class component will contain its own name information and the methods with which to change and print that name information. Again, data and operations. I think this will all make a lot more sense to you after we complete these modifications in the code. So the Hello Again assignment will be similar to last week's assignment. All the steps will be provided in the assignment. I'll demonstrate them in the video lecture, and then you'll do them on your own. By the way, this will be the last assignment of this nature. No more step-by-step instructions on subsequent homeworks. After this, you'll be working from short program descriptions exclusively. So again, I encourage you to have the assignment open and follow along in your own JGrasp session. So let's get started.